Texas Pete is taking its flavor on the road with convenient, easy-to-enjoy portion control packets. Whether it's a Texas Pete dip cup or sauce packet, your customers will be able to enjoy bold flavor for a better, on-the-go dining experience. Anywhere, anytime. Ask your broker for the #1 portion control, hot sauce, or visit TexasPeteFoodService.com for more information. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Extra Serving, a Nation's Restaurant News podcast. I am your host, Holly Petrie. It is earnings season, as you will hear us say about 5 million times over the next few weeks, and the outlook is mixed. Brands like KFC and Pizza Hut have taken a big fall, while Wingstop and Chipotle are seeing big gains. McDonald's had a tough quarter. While still up, the chain saw its value player status fall even further. Starbucks also had a hard quarter. It experienced a decrease in same-store sales for the first time since the pandemic. That's the same story for Yum Brands, which as a whole experienced the same. There's also been a bit of interesting news to come out of earnings season. We finally have an idea of how California's AB 1228 is impacting restaurants in a different way. Denny's reported this week that the minimum wage increase actually helped its own retention because of strategies the brand has implemented while also not raising its own minimum wage for workers. Let's dive into it. But first, let me introduce my lovely co-hosts.
I'm Alicia Kelso, Executive Editor of Nation's Restaurant News.
I'm Joanna Fantozzi, Senior Editor with Nation's Restaurant News.
I'm glad we're going to get your expertise on the podcast today, and yours as well, Joanna, because you are our queen of Starbucks. So very much appreciate that, because that was
someone has to do that work.
Someone's got to do it, and that was a big one this month. So we're definitely going to need you. So first off, I just want to start with, we kind of had like a week and a half of earnings, I'd say, since it kind of started. So what are your first impressions, kind of both of you in general of what this earnings season we got a little taste of that we can expect more of?
Sure. I'll go ahead and start. My takeaway at this point in earnings season is it's all over the map. And I don't know if that's a huge surprise. I think a lot of people expected Q1 to be bumpy. We had that issue of weather that impacted every concept in January. It was, well documented. I think what surprised me is the disparity of all over the map. You've got on one hand, Chipotle and Wingstop that are just meteoric right now, that are just actually kind of stunning in a way. And then you've got, the companies that are pressured more than I think anyone really expected. And I say that in reference to Yum Brands. I say that in reference to Starbucks. And, McDonald's, to be fair, had comp sales. Their comp sales were up 2.5%, was their 13th consecutive positive quarter, which is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, but they talked at length about how their value gap perception is shrinking among their competitors. And that's a shock. That's like a bellwether to how the general economy is going. McDonald's is a bellwether. And then you had all these concepts that I would say are mixed or, improving, which we always like to see. I mean, Brinker reported and Chili's is really making a lot of progress, aggressively going after, QSR pricing. Burger King is making a tremendous amount of progress. Domino's, same thing. So we had the winners and we had the losers, and most people most companies I think are probably a little bit in between is my early takeaway.
Well, so I stream things. I don't have an actual TV. I have a TV, but I don't have cable. And I saw a Chili's commercial last night where I thought it was such a good commercial. They had like a little mascot in the window that was singing the Chili's baby back ribs jingle, but they were like, we don't hire people, like we don't hire these characters anymore. We're all about the value. We're giving you the food you want. But it was like a funny, cute commercial. And I was like, I knew the story and I knew that was why they were doing it. But I was like, that's a good, clever commercial. That's like, that I feel like every customer would relate to.
They have a huge tailwind right now from their advertising and marketing investments and efforts. Kevin Hochman, their CEO, came from KFC when KFC was doing the celebrity kernels, and that really kind of turned the company around. He's he's a marketing guy, and he brought, George Felix on board also from KFC. They know what they're doing on the marketing front, and what they're doing right now is, pushing brand awareness, top of mind in a way that has not been the case for Chili's in several years. And we can see by these results, these improved results. Traffic was a little negative, but higher than, their peers. Improved dine-in traffic. We can see that these results are paying off. I'd be remiss, and I don't want to ignore Joanna, sorry, but while we're talking about Chili's, the thing that intrigues me, in addition to their advertising marketing efforts, is all these operational simplicity efforts that they're doing. We started talking about this last year. In fact, our May issue, which is always our biggest issue, last year was about the year of simplicity, and Brinker was a huge resource for that. Every single month they talk to their team members to understand, hey, what can we do to make your jobs easier? And they provide a tremendous amount of input. And when Chili's executes against that input, they're saving on, these simplicity efforts are starting to pay off. We've seen that with margin improvement as well. So
I think that my takeaways from this quarter so far, obviously we're just about, I think about halfway through the earnings season, and so we don't have the entire picture yet. And I don't want to make a large generalization, but and not everybody falls into this category, but I do think that quick service is struggling a little bit. And I think that as Alicia, as you said in the McDonald's call, they really are struggling with value perception. And that's something that I actually saw in my feature to plug the May issue yet again. I saw something that was what my research showed in my May issue feature, which was on the changing consumer value equation, about how the gap, the value perception between limited service and full service restaurants is really shrinking as quick service prices keep going up, as things like delivery and service fees, etc., keep going up. And I do think that is something that is really seen in the particularly with Yum Brands, particularly with Starbucks. Starbucks in particular had such an awful quarter that I mean every brand has clunker quarters for sure, but I do think that that they haven't had a bad quarter in many years, and so people were kind of shocked. Apparently, Jim Cramer interviewed interviewed the CEO of Starbucks, Lakshman Narasimhan, and kind of yelled at him about how terrible they did. He's always yelling though, but I do think it's indicative of the fact that, and Starbucks specifically said this in their earnings call, that the biggest struggle that they had was with customers being more deliberate and choosy with where they spend their dollars. And I think that that's true. And that's where that consumer value equation comes into play. If you're thinking, well, the reason I used to go to these quick service chains is because places like KFC, Starbucks, it's because they used to have so much value as compared to me just going into a Chili's, for example. And now all of a sudden that kind of like value and price differentiation is shrinking, then maybe you're not really going to choose to go there as much anymore.
that's spot on. I mean, if you look at inflation, now, I think you're right in one way, which is the way, and that is, consumers have reached and exceeded the threshold on their pricing. We've been wondering when the shoe was going to drop, and I think Q1 is pretty much indicated with the QSR segment in particular that it is, it's slowly falling off the ledge finally. I want to be fair here, every concept in this industry has had to take significant pricing in the past several years because of inflationary pressures. But when you think about the McDonald's, which is the standard bearer for value seekers in this industry, its perception is going to be more vulnerable when costs go up. McDonald's, it took 10% last year. I think it's taken pricing a little bit higher in some markets. Now franchisees, set their pricing in various markets, but that's at the high end of what we've seen with everybody taking pricing. But in this grand narrative of everybody's had to take pricing, McDonald's, I think, is the most vulnerable because of that value perception. So when costs go up across the board, they're going to be a bigger target. And I think that's why we kind of saw the leadership gap close. With this threshold that consumers have reached, they're becoming far more discerning. Well, prices are high. We're still going to go out to eat because we like to go out to eat. We're just obviously we're not going to do it as frequently, and we're going to be way more discerning about where we do it. And that's where Chili's is, their marketing approach has been a little bit brilliant, going directly after McDonald's. Hey, we've got this burger. It's like 50 cents more and it's, bigger and you get more stuff with it and you get service too. And that seems to be paying off a little bit. And when I think you look at the earnings, again, it's early days, but fast casual, I think, sits in the sweet spot here because if we have this conversation about every single concept having to take pricing, there's still the convenience factor at play. Not everybody wants to go to sit down at Chili's, even if they have more abundance of food and service. Sometimes they don't have time. That value is a little bit eroded when you consider the tipping aspect of full service. So fast casual sits at a sweet spot here as the pricing lines have become blurred among concepts. Chipotle is really not that much more expensive anymore than many QSRs. And so you can go and get that abundant, value food and get it on the go too. And I think that's why we're seeing Chipotle and Wingstop, the fast casual players, we have a couple more that need to report. But if you look at even the private fast casual players, in our Technomic data, they're wildfire right now. And this whole segment is really in a sweet spot for this pressured consumer.
And I think that moving forward, the quick service category as a whole is going to need to have a little bit of a makeover. I think that not all quick service brands, but I think a lot of them will have to rethink exactly what makes my brand differentiate from fast casual, from casual dining, because it isn't so much price anymore. Sometimes, if you see like drive-through lines, sometimes it's not really convenience anymore. So you have to think about what makes my brand within this quick service sector differentiated from others in fast casual and casual dining. Why would you go to McDonald's as opposed to sitting down at Chili's? And I think that we're already starting to see that with how brands are kind of trying to respond to this. Starbucks released a slew of news during their earnings call, as they are wont to do, more so than I think any other brand. And one of the takeaways that I got from that is that they're really trying to reel people in with new things that they haven't really done before, which is discounting. I feel like they're not really hugely known for discounting. And they said that starting this summer, they're going to start having app-specific deals and discounts that you don't have to be a Starbucks Rewards member to take advantage of. And that really is surprising to me because they usually don't do it discounting as much, but they're trying to get back into we are affordable and you want to make us part of your everyday routine. And if you are, if you're cutting things out of your going out to eat routine, then you won't cut out Starbucks because, hey, they sent me a coupon in the app.
That's the Starbucks thing, Joanna. I know it's your beat and I got to talk about it. I just have to talk about it.
Please do.
It just seems like they're throwing spaghetti at a wall right now to see what's going to stick. And one of the big takeaways from their earnings that I had, which I'm sure you had as well, is okay. You are trying to solve for these dramatic reductions. Their rewards member reduction, I think, is the biggest concern. You lose rewards members, then you lose that data and it's harder to get those consumers back. But the speed of service thing stood out to me. They're losing customers in the morning, which coffee in the morning is critical. It's the highest profit, highest margin. It's habitual. If you can't execute against speed and operations in the morning, you're going to lose customers. And for them to come out and say we're going to add all these things, these menu items and these drinks, I wonder how that is going to translate to smoother operations. It barely does. I have yet to see a concept throw more stuff on the menu and, have it translate to better operational execution. That is interesting to me. I think we'd be remiss. We're talking about the consumer right now, which for good reason, right? The consumer is the driver of all this bumpiness and weirdness that's happening in the industry right now, and they're becoming more choosy based on price perception and convenience, and who hits both as a sweet spot. But for the likes of the Starbucks, and KFC also had an extremely challenged quarter. I think we'd be remiss to not talk about competition. And when you are unable to execute on speed of service in the morning for someone on their way to work who just wants a morning coffee, then there's more places for them to turn to. Then, look at the growth of the Dutch Bros and the Seven Brew and the Scooters and all these emerging coffee concepts that we've been talking about at length. And the same applies with KFC. We didn't get a lot of color on KFC's challenges other than promotional activity at QSR peers. Popeyes had an incredible quarter, but we're not just talking about Popeyes. Chick-fil-A is an engine that is still churning and burning, but then we've got the Dave's Hot Chicken, the Slim Chickens, there's a ton, Big Chicken, all this chicken, that are coming into these markets in earnest. And, really just, it's almost decision fatigue. But consumers want variety, and there's more places for them to go and get it now.
So an interesting thing about Starbucks is 100% agreed here is that they are throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. It was listening to the earnings. I was like typing everything as fast as I can. I couldn't even keep up with the amount of news that they were saying. And it was something that stuck out to me. And I thought, I was like, this is also not a great thing, is that they seem to be chasing trends rather than being a leader.
Jack in the Box has boba on the menu, and Starbucks is thinking about it. That's kind of your point.
So I want to kind of go back to a topic that you brought up earlier, Alicia, which is the speed of service at Starbucks, because we have that as one side of the coin, and then we have Chipotle, which improved, I think, by 15 seconds, right? It's something crazy. So you get these two opposing, and Chipotle crushed it. Their traffic was up 5%. Like, they crushed it. So that's an interesting dynamic. We know Chick-fil-A every year ups how fast they can get their drive-through orders done. That includes their in-person. There's a mobile unit right here in New York City that has those digital boards, but they're very clear on their speed of service. And then so next week, Sweetgreen reports, and last quarter they talked about how their digital kitchens and their innovation kitchens are crushing speed of service. I'm sure that's only going to increase as they've had more. So I think that we're seeing the speed of service really determine how people are using brands.
If we're going to pull a case study so far from Q1, it's certainly Chipotle alongside Wingstop. And Chipotle, about 2 years ago, dedicated itself to becoming, quote, a culture of throughput, and has put in a ton of work, to meet that objective. And I think that we're starting to see those results very clearly. And on the call, CEO Brian Nichols said we're going to be talking about throughput for the foreseeable future. I mean, they're maniacally focused on throughput. And like you said, that absolutely yields results. And from Chipotle specifically, the proof in this pudding is that in-store was their fastest growing channel. It actually took away from some of the mobile order ahead traffic, because people saw that the lines were moving. And so they're like, oh, let's just go inside. And I just don't think I ever would have predicted that 2 years ago. Mobile order ahead is brilliant. It's convenient. They're building Chipotlanes around this concept for the company. It's higher margin, higher sale, so the fact that their throughput efforts are paying off in a way that in-store is now taking away that order ahead traffic, I think is really a remarkable thing that the industry should be paying attention to a little bit more.
Well, and there are those rumors on social media, unsure if they're true, that if you order in person at Chipotle, you're going to get more in your bowl than if you order for a pickup. So that may also be why people are going that way.
Could be.
You know, all about that value proposition. Okay, so before we leave, I want to talk about Denny's because they made this comment that, you know, in light of AB 1228, they thought they were going to lose a lot of workers to this $20 an hour minimum wage that applies to fast food. So quick service, fast casual, those limited service chains. And so Denny's in their earnings actually came out and said that they've had higher employee retention since this measure was enacted. And it's because they have like the Gleam program and they have all these things that are employee resources and benefits for employees, even though they're not paying the same wages as these fast food restaurants. And I found that a really interesting takeaway.
Denny's, they're a tremendous leader in benefits. I mean, they're leading this conversation on mental wellness. You know, Kelly Valade speaks at a conference and I always tear up because she's like, this is really important. And businesses have the right to help solve this issue. And if we think about our, you know, especially the younger workforce, which is a big chunk of the restaurant industry, they want that stuff. They don't just want pay. They've made that really clear, you know, through surveys, through various data points throughout the past several years, especially since the onset of the pandemic. You know, when our workforce became essential, you know, working became more, you know, more holistic of a thing. It became more important. Okay, pay is great. You know, but at the end of the day, how is your job experience? And we're having this discussion in the industry far more often, you know, now more than ever. And thank God for that. And I think that was the point of, you know, Denny's, you know, whole presentation. And but at the end of the day, it's still very early days. You know, I think this AB 1228 has a lot of playing out to do. And I think it's still very, very early days. And I think that Denny's is in a position as a larger company to be okay if it does have to eventually raise wages. It's the independence that we should be looking at a little bit more. So that's my one takeaway from this, is that Denny's is a leader in benefits that employees want. And that indicates that this whole industry, this whole job is about more than just pay.
And restaurants should be paying close attention at least, because this is probably not going to stop in California. I think a lot of other states have their eye on this bill to see how the legislation is doing while in practice. And I would not be surprised if other states, maybe a state like Washington, maybe a state like Illinois or New York, follows suit with similar legislation.
What will happen, in my, you know, guesstimation here, is that the companies that can't absorb this cost will move out, shutter. But they're going to be there's not going to be a lull in them getting. There's a lot of emerging concepts that have really strong balance sheets that are chomping at the bit to move in here, that already pay pretty high wages. So I think, you know, I don't think we're going to see a drain in the industry out of California from this. I just think we're going to see new concepts eagerly getting into the state, into the market.
I'm curious, do you think that we'll see a lot of free franchising going around? Because I keep thinking about the ahead of the minimum wage going up in California, multiple Pizza Hut franchisees got rid of delivery drivers completely, which Pizza Hut kind of released this mild statement about it. I don't really remember exactly what it said, but it was fairly mild. But I have to admit, they probably weren't thrilled. with it. I mean, obviously they can't control what their franchisees do, but I wonder if, you know, if there are franchisees that are struggling in California, especially unfortunately smaller businesses, if they might be doing some refranchising or even purchasing back those franchise restaurants.
Yeah, well, I think this could go either way, either that, or I think that companies are going to offload some of these costs and try and be more aggressive with franchising. You know, because this is huge to their balance sheets, to the franchisors' balance sheets as well. And so you know, the Pizza Hut thing I think was really interesting. It reminded me, again, I think we've had this conversation, so forgive me. It reminded me of when Obamacare first went into place, when I first started covering this industry, and everybody was, you know, doomsdaying that as well. I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to go out of business. There were companies that laid off, you know, their employees, you know, before the rule even went into place, just to prepare for this. And, you know, I think the Papa John's thing is what stands out to me. He said on an earnings call, this was back when John Schnutter was running the ship. He said on an earnings call, we're going to have to raise pizza prices by 60 cents. And there was a backlash on that on both sides. Like, oh my God, 60 cents a pizza. And then, oh, I'll pay 60 cents to be able to afford healthcare for employees. And I feel like that same sort of disparity is happening now. I'll pay, you know, 60 cents more for a burger if that means these employees are getting a living wage. Or, you know, is $20 an hour a living wage in California? I don't know. That's another debate, right? So this conversation is very complex. There's no black and white here. I wouldn't want to run a business and deal with this. I can tell you that. So I'm empathetic to that. But I also, you know, I also think this conversation needs more time. And I think that the operators, most of them, will figure it out, because there's always challenges in this industry and there's always stuff. So, I mean, there's me being Pollyannish, but you know, ideally there's the company's got a game plan in place. You know, we've seen some companies get really creative, like adding large drinks. I think Dave's Hot Chicken was the concept that, hey, we're going to just add a large drink. Drinks are huge on margins. Is it going to offset all of the labor line pressures? No, but it's going to certainly help. And it's one part of, you know, this major puzzle that can be done to navigate this, which is not going away. You know, we can bitch and moan about it, but it's here.
You know, I went to a hotel recently, a hotel chain. So, you know, still, they charged $8 for a small cup of black coffee to go. I did not get it, but
That is crazy.
right? I was like mind blown. That's more than
good.
Chain.
That's good for the restaurant industry. Maybe those hotels will condition consumers for paying that much, and then the $4 coffee, you know, that McDonald's had to put out there in California to offset these wage prices won't seem so bad. Again, that's way speculative and Pollyannish, but you know, we at the end of the day, this whole conversation comes back to what's happening right now, and we're seeing this in real time. And restaurants, they can't afford to take more pricing. Consumers have reached their limit. And so I think what I'm excited about, especially in conversation of that Yum Brands, the thing we're talking about with Yum Brands, you know, it's testing AI at the drive-thru at Taco Bell in California. We're gonna see a lot of creativity come out of this. Large drinks, AI at the drive-thru, and everything in between. You know, scheduling technology to be more efficient on the labor line. All of these things, there are solutions. And I think because we're such early days here, we don't know, you know, the breadth of those solutions yet. But I think if we have this conversation a year from now, it's going to be pretty exciting to see, you know, how many concepts, I don't want to say most, but many concepts are navigating, you know, this added cost pressure.
It's an exciting time. I mean, it's sad and it's scary, but
we don't have to run the P&L, so it's exciting for us. We don't have to puppeteer the pricing. So yeah, it's real exciting.
It's exciting for us to report on and see how companies are innovating, you know, in the face of these challenges, because we watched that with COVID. Companies really were able to change operations at the drop of a hat. They were creating new things. They were putting in new systems. And I think this could be a similar era to that, where we're seeing people deal with pricing in innovative ways and figuring out how to work around that for customers. And AI and technology is really booming now. We're seeing a lot of AI used in big chains and in larger ways than it was for years. I remember Joanna seeing AI like at the restaurant show like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was like wild. And now it's just like here. And I think that that's going to be really interesting to cover, as we go forward. It's a fun time to see innovation, but it's a scary time financially. So, we'll combine those two to say it's a weird time and we're going to enjoy it.
Pricing
Right.
innovation. Did somebody say dynamic pricing?
Somebody
Or
say happy
surge
hour?
pricing?
That just means happy hour to me. So does that mean it's time?
So thank you guys. It's been great.
Thanks for having.
Bye.
Texas Pete is taking its flavor on the road with convenient, easy to enjoy portion control packets. Whether it's a Texas Pete dip cup or sauce packet, your customers will be able to enjoy bold flavor for a better on-the-go dining experience. Anywhere, anytime. Ask your broker for the #1 portion control hot sauce or visit TexasPeteFoodService.com for more information. Anne Mejia, welcome to the podcast. So tell me a little bit about yourself before we dive into Mellow Mushroom.
Well, I'm here in Atlanta. I work with Mellow Mushroom. I'm the Senior Vice President of Brand Development, and my group works on all things branding, advertising, menu development, beverage development, and also the supply chain group works really closely with us because of the food development piece of it.
That's a lot. You kind of touched everything there.
Right. But we're not a huge organization. We have 163 restaurants. We're in 18 states. And, we really have a really strong team here. I've been working in the restaurant industry for a couple of decades. I did a few years in the fast food world with Jack in the Box, and then also with Carl's Jr. I've worked outside of the restaurant industry as well. I worked with a real estate franchise for a number of years. And I found that I missed restaurants. There's so much camaraderie inside an individual restaurant, but also here at a support center for a restaurant company. So, and I'm just a food lover in general. So I've been here with Mellow Mushroom for almost 6 years, and it's been just a delight to be here.
There is something about the restaurant world that just pulls you back in. I've heard it from a lot of people, and they're just like, they'll leave and they're like, I had to come back. I just, it felt right. So I'm glad that you came back into the world.
Thank you.
So, we've seen Mellow Mushroom go through a few iterations in the past few years, I guess, kind of since you've been there. But why don't you tell me about the brand first, and then we'll sort of dive into the fun things that you guys have been doing.
Right. So we are actually 50 years old this year. And if we go back in time 50 years, there are two immutable parts of the brand. One is a focus on food quality, creating the best pizza that we can using the better ingredients. And that has stayed true all 50 years. We use the same recipe for our dough today that we did in 1974. If we're going to have disagreements here in Atlanta, we're going to talk about, well, I don't know if that's just, does it taste right? Is it the right quality? That's how our discussions go. We also are equally passionate about creating what I like to call the mellow vibe, creating an environment for our guests that's really fairly immersive, not a typical restaurant. No two of our restaurants are ever alike. Their design aesthetic is always different, and the elements in the restaurant always engaging, always very colorful. And we also pride ourselves on inviting our guests to come as they are, whether that means like, hey, if you have food allergies, we got you covered. We've been serving gluten-free pizzas for years. We've been serving 4 of our core menu pizzas on our menu are vegetarian. We serve dairy-free cheese because when we didn't just start last year, we started 25 years ago with that because we understood people want to have pizza. They love pizza. And whether you're vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, whatever the situation, we want to meet our guests where they are. So creating a really welcoming environment as well as that food quality, that hasn't changed for 50 years. What has changed is how guests experience the restaurant world. And I think you know this. So we find today that 30 to 40% of our business is ordered online and consumed off premise. That's a growing trend. And that is significantly up from pre-pandemic. So something that happened in the last 5 years is guests are like, hey, I do like this online ordering. So that means our guests are experiencing the brand first and not that unique immersive experience. So as we delved into guest research over the last few years, what we found was our guests do love our food, which we knew. Our guests do love that colorful, exciting environment. The fact that each restaurant has local artists that have decorated the walls and is colorful really resonates. That we offer full service bars, that also resonates as well. Where we found that we were really not resonating was on the brand side, and we hadn't really concentrated on that. So as we probe deeper with guests, they really kind of led us to the answer. They said, you know, that Mellow Mushroom logo, if it's going to work for me as something that's identifiable, it will have a mushroom in it. And from there, then our strategic team, as well as our creative team, got to work and we created a new logo, still same name, Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers, but now we have an icon, which is a pizza mushroom. It looks like a slice of pizza. It looks like a mushroom, however you look at it. And that is something we didn't have before. And that now we're using that in advertising, menu design. We're using it in restaurant design as well. And then we paired that with paring down our psychedelic palette of colors and really anchoring it to a really deep, rich purple. It's called Mel's Mood. And that really frees up our design teams. And we paired that again with some unique designs that helps to just make the design process faster, gives the brand consistency in packaging, uniform design, and menu design, all those guests, and our website design. So that is really what we've done with, hey, how do we take this terrific brand that has all of this uniqueness, not cut out any of the uniqueness, but give it a framework that really creates that brand that people can anchor on to, because that's how the guests are starting their journey. They're starting online.
So my colleague Alicia Kelso wrote a feature and a gallery on the updates. So I will link that so people can see great photos of exactly what you guys are doing so they could visualize it. But I'm curious to know, behind you, if you're listening on this audio, you can't see it, but if you're on the video, there's a really beautiful, like, psychedelic image behind you that is branded. So is that still part of the new journey that Mellow Mushroom is going through? Because it's still very psychedelic.
Right. So this is a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. So the purple background, that's Mel's Mood. So you can see that. And you can see we haven't abandoned mushrooms or rainbows or anything else like that. We've just, if you've seen anything we've previously worked on, sometimes we would have things that were just black and red and gray colored. And we took the opportunity to explore. So we have a library of artwork that is enormous from different artists. We've had the pleasure to work with so many local artists over the years, but now we wanted to narrow that down. And the piece behind me, this Mellow Out piece, really is an example of that we use for our franchisees to say, hey, change is a little bit hard. We're not abandoning psychedelia. So for other restaurant chains, my background probably feels completely frightening because they you know, I've worked for other brands as well. You know, you have 2 or 3 core colors. We have 8 core colors. So that's really, for us, that's like really trimming it down and making it very mellow yet branded.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of the psychological thoughts behind a lot of this psychedelic, you know, you think it comes from Portland or California or Washington, but you guys are not just in the Northwest. I mean, the Northwest. Oh my God. Early in the morning, guys.
Yeah.
But you're not just there, you're in Atlanta right now. So how has that sort of translated as you guys have grown?
Right. So that's a great question. So we were founded in 1974. So really the ethos of the counterculture has been some of our guiding principles. And even back then, the three partners that founded it were just out of college. 2 of them had made pizzas and one of them loved pizza. So it was a love of pizza that brought them together. And I spoke earlier about the love of food, but really the whole idea of the counterculture, that's really the ethos of the brand. Like, we've prided ourselves on, there's not a single uniform. When you go in to see a server, when you go into a Mellow Mushroom, your server might have a different uniform on than the person that's serving at the bar. And that's by design, because we know that people want to be authentic. They want to be themselves. So we never offer a crew t-shirt that's one crew t-shirt. They have a selection of them. And it's a source of pride for the Shroom crew, the folks that work in our restaurants, because they've been there for a while. They probably have a collection of 20, 30 t-shirts. So that's part of that. Part of the reason why you see what you traditionally think of as maybe like San Francisco was the hub of the counterculture. Why it lives on here at Mellow Mushroom was that we really took it as a people first approach. What makes people feel comfortable and their authentic selves? When you go out and you're going to have delicious food, you want to be served. So we have full service restaurants, right? Then that helps you to relax, especially if you're a mom with kids, or even if you're with friends and colleagues from work. So we want to make people who come into our restaurant feel authentic and feel themselves and relaxed and stimulated too by the art on the walls. And the same thing with the Shroom crew that works for us. We knew that if we started making rules that you must do this and you must say this and you must say that. So we really took the 1970s sort of counterculture vibe and we said, how do we really make that and keep that alive in the brand? And so kudos to all of our franchisees, because it comes to life every single day in their restaurants, and our guests, it resonates with our guests, it resonates with the folks that work in our restaurants.
What is that like organizationally to have, you know, this group of people, your workers, your franchisees, who are feeling this movement of, you know, happiness and individuality? And how is that from an organizational standpoint? You think it's kind of counterintuitive.
Right, exactly. Well, so for us, where it really comes to life is a few different ways. On the menu, every one of our restaurants has the same menu except for one section. It's called Locals Only. And there's part of that on the food menu and part of that on our beverage menu with our bar. And that's where our franchisees come up with just really creative combinations of food. Last year, the gentleman that runs our Cincinnati restaurants did a skyline chili pie, because skyline chili, as you know, is so popular in Cincinnati, and it is in his top 10 best-selling pies in his restaurant. So kudos to him. So it's really a place where, so we've put some structures in place, and same thing ditto on the cocktail menu as well. And then I spoke earlier about, you know, it's not a design your own t-shirt world, but we give a lot of selections. We get a lot of like write-ins of like, will you reprint my favorite t-shirt? There's one that, you know, there's a few favorites that a couple of times a year we'll reprint them so that the teams can have them. The place where it really comes to life the most is in restaurant design, and that is, what is this restaurant going to look like? What are the features that our franchisees want? What kind of a bar? Almost all of our restaurants have patios, which gives, that's a great place to really customize and say, okay, for the 4 to 7 months a year that those patios are in use, what's going on there? And our franchisees change up their patios every spring. They might add, cornhole or, giant Jenga or anything like that. So built into store design and the menu and the uniform program, we have this individuality that's built in. So they're really, again, we're 50 years old. So this recipe for us has been working to keep that individuality alive. And then the last piece of that is really for our guests. So we have a build your own pie section that's part of our menu. One of our favorite parts of that is that our guests can actually do a half and half pie. So I don't have any statistics if this keeps for happy couples or anything like that. But if you're a pepperoni lover and somebody in your family's not, we'll put a pepperoni on half your pizza if you want to experiment with some new combination. And really that individuality does not end with how we set up the restaurant. Our guests know that we're more than willing to build the pizza that they can imagine.
It sounds like this individuality in both the menu and the design is something that, you think of a smaller chain doing. You don't think of a chain the size of Mellow Mushroom, 150 units-ish. Like, you don't think of that. You think of that it's a more tailored approach to something that hasn't franchised, that hasn't done any of that. So how do you guys keep growing while maintaining this love of individuality and this passion for just a fun brand?
Right. Well, that's also another great question. So like I said, we have a menu plan, we have a beverage plan, we have a uniform plan, and then with store design, we don't really start say from scratch. We like to say, okay, what elements? Tell us what you, our franchisee, are looking to create here. And then we have a store design team that's really able to say, hey, let's not start from scratch, but maybe let's build off some samples of what we've done in the past. And we've worked with so many artists so that we can help guide that process. So it's never as if we're starting from day one. We're starting from, okay, this new restaurant will be the next chapter in the Mellow Mushroom story.
Now I have to ask, it seems like you guys are tailor-made for children. You have colorful designs, you have pizza, which is like kids' favorite food. Like, what's that kind of environment like? Are you seeing a big percentage of children in your restaurants?
So it's interesting. We do have a children's menu. It is not a big part of our menu mix. And I think, and it's interesting because I personally have spent time in concepts where the children's menu, that's where the children eat. But pizza is one of those things that pretty early on, children are eating cheese pizza. If there was a favorite pizza among children, I would say it's probably cheese pizza. It's one of our top 5 selling pizzas. Pizzas are also meant to be shared. We always say pizza is really popular, but it's also really intimate. You share pizzas with people that matter to you. You share pizzas with your colleagues. You share pizzas with your family. You share pizzas with your new in-laws. You take a pizza to your new neighbors. So you share pizzas. So it's a shareable food. So we feel like for kids, it's part of that family environment. We are now, being 50 years old, on to the 3rd generation of Mellow Mushroom lovers. For some families, we're the 4th generation. So we hear stories all the time of families of oh, I grew up with Mellow Mushroom. Then I went to college and there was Mellow Mushroom. We have people the 1st dates, 5th dates, get engaged. We've had people order Mellow Mushroom for their weddings. So for kids and for kids, it's a fun, exciting environment. For mom and dad and parents and grandparents, it's also an adult environment. It's not an environment that was built for children. It's an environment that was built for everyone so that mom and dad can have a beer, can have a cocktail. We have a growing mocktail program as well. We've seen a big spike in that. So, and that's also great for kids. So yes. And I will say we do have a terrific brownie sundae on our menu, which I believe that is also a very popular, according to my children, very popular with kids. My children are older now, but when they were younger, I heard.
I mean, it's like the ideal environment for a parent to take their child, but also be able to get an alcoholic cocktail on the side, like makes everything much more mellow, just like Mellow Mushroom.
Right, there you go. Now you're catching on to the whole vibe of Mellow. Yes.
So, you mentioned this increase in off-premise dining and that you guys have sort of tailored a new experience for people who are using this. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because, we have a lot of people who have Friday night pizza night or who order a bunch of pizzas for a party. And so how are you making this experience good for customers who are used to coming into your stores?
Right. So with the rebranding, we also rebuilt our website. So it's now easier than ever to order your Mellow Mushroom pizza. We also just recently this spring added a catering channel. So now our guests can actually order catering. So if you are catering for an office luncheon, you can just go online and order it. And it's right there. You can save your favorite orders so that, you can go back, order again and again, save your payment methods. So we're making it easier for folks to do business with us. The other thing that we did with the rebranding, when we rebranded and rebuilt the website, it encompasses Mel's Mood and our whole new aesthetic as well. But we also paired that with advertising campaigns and changed up our advertising. So for the guests that's finding us online for the first time, there's a sort of seamless approach to being able to order online. For guests that have ordered online, we just make it that much easier for them. So, and then what we're doing within our restaurant environment with all of our new restaurants, we have a dedicated to-go door so that people that are ordering to go can easily get in and get out. In most of our restaurants, we have dedicated parking spots for either curbside pickup or to go. And then as we remodel our restaurants, we are also taking a really hard look at what is the equipment you need to really have a great to-go experience so the food is warm when it's picked up. We offer delivery at most of our restaurants as well for additional charge, obviously. But we changed up our packaging a few years ago to make sure that everything was not only single-use plastic if it was plastic, but also could hold the heat and keep the integrity of the food as it could travel anywhere from, 10 minutes to 20 or 30 minutes.
So I feel like we should kind of end this conversation with talking about the mushroom and how it plays into not only the brand identity, but sort of how it came to be.
Our new mushroom icon you're asking about?
Yes.
Okay, so our new mushroom icon actually came about because we were going through this exploration of what do we do with Mellow Mushroom? Is it 2 M's? Should we play up 1 M? Should we use an M and have it be the mellow and the mushroom? And really what we decided with the whole logo was first, the word mellow is sort of billowy and doughy. And so that speaks to the dough. And the word mushroom is much more straight and narrow letters. And that gets to sort of our, hey, we're going to do anything to make food quality and we're going to stay true to who we are and create this vibe. The mushroom icon came about because we had 50 ideas on a board and we had a red X through all of them, like literally. And then, I don't know, everybody took the weekend, came back, and our old logo had our character Mel holding this slice of pizza that looked like it was about to slide off his hand. And so the designer had taken the pizza slice and then drew a mushroom around it. And then when we saw it, the creative team said, oh, you have got to come and see this. And I've never heard that level of excitement from these folks. I was like, Oh my gosh. And when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. It was just, when something is so simple, yet so brilliant and captures the soul of a brand, it's just, that's how we ended up with our pizza mushroom icon.
I am so hungry for pizza right now. We've been talking and I'm like, oh, sounds so good. Oh my
Yes.
God. And I love
So
the
next time
environment.
you're
Fun.
in Atlanta, we'll go grab a slice together, okay?
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Anne. It was so lovely to talk to you and to see these beautiful graphics that everybody should turn to the video for. Texas Pete is taking its flavor on the road with convenient, easy to enjoy portion control packets. Whether it's a Texas Pete dip cup or sauce packet, your customers will be able to enjoy bold flavor for a better on-the-go dining experience. Anywhere, anytime. Ask your broker for the #1 portion control hot sauce or visit TexasPeteFoodService.com for more information.